Hey everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing The Color of Pomegranates. This film came out in 1969. It is a Soviet/Armenian experimental film made by the very eccentric auteur Sergei Parajanov. Parajanov, I think, is one of the greatest kind of impressionistic auteurs of his time and maybe ever, infusing the aura of a lot of old films, especially from the silent era, and kind of reinvigorating them, giving them this kind of really interesting surrealist quality. His films include a lot of heavy theological symbols and Eastern folklore, and it is, when it comes together, it is one of the most extraordinary, most exotic experiences you can, I think, have watching a movie. For real, it's filmmakers like this, filmmakers like Tarkovsky and Klimov that I think are really pushing the limitations, pushing the boundaries of what the cinema can do to the most of their ability. They transcend beyond the narrative in the way that we're used to it, I think, in a lot of ways. You know, they're transcending beyond the idea of character depth, character motivation, and the specifics of plot, and more kind of shooting right to the core of the cerebrum, so all that external stuff sort of just gets obliterated. Filmmakers like this, who have that real kind of impressionistic quality to their work, you know, I think they see the world in a very similar way, or at least that's what it seems like. There's this kind of cosmic thread between a lot of the filmmakers like this, where it seems almost like they see the world in like a strange flow state, this strange sort of fluctuating stream of consciousness that is always continuous. So everything is running into each other and everything's very complex. And that's a place that is so unique because it's where a lot of things can be questioned, especially reality. Reality can be questioned. And I think often our great enlightenments in life, our great examinations of ourselves often come through the expression of art. Rather than in reality. People always wonder why that is, and as I am always saying, you know, it's because, or at least in part, I think part of it is because so much of art comes from the dream state. All these feelings that we have locked inside that just kind of come out where we can't control them. And in art, you can use all of these splintered abstractions that may or may not mean something deeper and make something cohesive out of it. And truly, I think that can be a very reflective sort of thing. Yes, technically this movie is a biography. It's a biography on Sayat Nova, who was, you know, an Armenian poet as well as a musician. A very interesting person to read about. I do recommend Googling him because, you know, even though this movie is technically about him, you know, you get almost no insight into who he really is as a person. Because again, this is not a traditional story of a man's life. This is more kind of like splintered abstractions, you know, kind of dealing with his internal struggles from when he's born to when he dies. And being about a poet, it feels like a piece of poetry, the film. It feels like a visual poem. And, you know, there's a lot of poetry that is interjected throughout the film as well. For me personally, I've always found a really spiritual connection with poetry, more so than I do traditional prose or traditional narrative, because it is that narrative abstraction, you know, which is, again, closer to dreams. So it feels more vulnerable. You know, it's often, a lot of poems are often told through that imagery and texture and a lot of sensory memories that I think that resonate a lot with human beings. And there's something more kind of rhythmic about it, more musical. So it's like, it's pushing into other areas of the mind, I think, and also just kind of pushing to the edges of the human experience in a way that kind of elevates our understanding of it. And it elevates our understanding in a way I think that the most important times in our lives really do, you know, by subverting all of those expectations so you can kind of just experience something in the purest sense. This movie has a quality to it where it feels almost like flowers, like a flower blooming, or, you know, like peacock feathers fanning out, or a kaleidoscope. It's just all this gorgeous color that is weaving and overlapping, and it's really beautiful, and it's forming something special. You may not know what it is, you may not understand it right away, but you know it's special. And if you don't understand the movie right away, you know, who cares? I really don't think this is the kind of movie you have to really understand in the way that I think a lot of people do. People tend to be really afraid of watching movies like this, and I think, I don't know, maybe partially because it's weird, partially because it's not doing the work for you, and that lack of assistance can sometimes be daunting for those who maybe aren't used to it. But I think part of the problem is that they think you have to be on some like higher level of intelligence to be able to comprehend a movie like this, or there's some sort of specific nugget, some specific key information that will help unlock all of the mysteries of the film. And that's certainly not the case. You don't have to be of any sort of intelligence level. You just have to have experiences, and you can attach them to whatever you see, the images you see here. I think it's very simple, actually. No, just turn off your mind, relax, float downstream. The first time I saw this movie, I really didn't think about it at all. I just watched it. And at a certain point, it started to feel very meditative, where I felt like I was kind of one with the screen. in a lot of ways. And, I just sort of let it ripple and bloom and evolve as a feeling. So it became a sort of state of being. And it's honestly, yeah, it's very, sorry, take your shots, but it's very psychedelic. It felt like an acid trip. So you just, when that happens, you just got to let it take you and not be too overwhelmed. I love it when your senses sort of merge into a weird sludge where you can't really differentiate one emotion from the other. Movies that make me feel that way are some of my very favorites. And this movie does that. And it helps you to explore, I think, or elevate your mind to the highest platitude. And it has a very cleansing sort of feeling. This movie feels like it's giving you a sort of wise perspective, like almost like you're finishing an ayahuasca ceremony and all these impurities are, just coming out of you. And it's like a reset. So suddenly everything you can just soak in like a sponge. Those are always the most beautiful moments, I think, in life. And with this movie, because everything is right to the edge, I think, of the human experience, or it's pushing those boundaries, a lot of those feelings are naturally ones that maybe we don't encounter all the time. They're more complex. All the emotions on the spectrum coming together at once. And so a lot of that is really hard to discern when it comes to metaphors and characters, having these symbols of all of that. So we really don't have characters necessarily. They're more just kind of like figures to me. Almost like dolls or puppets on some really elaborate set that was created. The way they move and everything is very interesting. It's very haunting. It's very hypnotic, almost like at times, almost like interpretive dance. It's like very robotic, but at the same time, there's a nice flow to it. All of it is through movement and just, the visuals of everything. There's almost no dialogue within the film. This movie reminds me of something like Blue by Derek Jarman, which, is a movie that is all basically just audible fragments of life, recollections of a life through those sensory memories, all as a collection as that life is ending. And that is an extremely powerful thing, like life flickering away from you. And also this really reminded me of Tarkovsky, just kind of the visual poem aspect of things. And, the camera here in this particular movie, Color of Pomegranates, it's very stationary. It's very distant. It feels like old silent films from like the early part of the 20th century. It's almost like a play where everything is in the frame. So, like there's no zoom into a character, or the camera's not panning, or it's not moving a lot. It's not giving you all the feelings, telling you where to direct your eyes. It's not guiding the emotion, but I love that. It's forcing you to kind of see the whole picture and hone in on the things that you feel really call out to you. You have that full perspective and you can soak in the beauty of it, almost like it is like this beautiful mural, this beautiful composition. But yet there's always something that is a little off about this movie. There's a lot of strange cuts that feel very jolting, that just kind of come out of nowhere. And it's even the same with the music. The music will be going and then it just seems to cut off and then come back on. It feels just kind of like a pop or something, but it's also very nostalgic. Instantly, it reminded me of a lot of the like the illusions that, somebody like Buster Keaton would create for his films, where something would be there and then it's gone. It is almost like a lethargic feeling here, that sharpness, that kind of jolts you back. I don't know, that reminded me of an acid trip, something that's always a little unsettled. And the music just naturally helps with that sharpness because it has a very ethnic, very plucky quality to it, which is very crucial to the experience of the film. And it's an extraordinary thing because even though every image is meant to be very flat, purposely flat, through the colors and the imagery and everything, and it's just amazing because even though everything is meant to look very flat, everything is meant to be distanced and very stationary, it feels somehow so musical and so like three-dimensional. It's almost like you're looking at murals or something. They're just so beautiful. But I think there's something about that that's interesting, that distance that we have. It almost feels as though we're looking at cave paintings or we're looking at hieroglyphics. So it is very distant from us, yet that ancient thing is right there. It's very timeless. It is like frozen into time. And again, because you have no dialogue, you need faces that really speak a lot of volumes. Again, just like you would cast for a silent film. And the performers they have here, they have a very alien-like look to them, yet still somehow incredibly vulnerable, incredibly human. It's very effective. They can do a lot with just a blank expression. You can feel a lot of pain and a lot of longing. There is a lot of pain and anguish just throughout the film. You can feel it. It feels like, again, wringing out the impurities as if you're on an ayahuasca trip or something and you're having a real spiritual connection with the life and death experience. I really love the section towards the beginning that's more symbolizing the love stage of this person's life, and as he's growing up to discover what love means and the complexities of it, the dangers of it. Yet it isn't as it would have been if this was a traditional biography. It's not really explored you know, through a man and a woman, or, you know, any sort of scenario like that. It's more, it's the same actress playing all kinds of different parts. She's playing both men and women, and it is the most compelling cinematic face. And it is the whole animus thing, and how, you know, masculinity and femininity to a degree is always kind of fluid in terms of what we experience in life, especially when you're thinking more in a surrealistic dream sort of sense. I mean, you know, even in a dream state, in a subconscious state, a lot of the times, you know, if a man and a woman are having sex in a dream, that doesn't necessarily mean there's two people in real life. It could mean that, you know, this person is wanting to get in touch with the feminine aspects of themselves and the masculine aspects of themselves. So this did feel almost like two aspects of the same consciousness, rather than, you know, like a love story between a man and a woman. And, you know, there's that whole Freudian thing throughout the film as well. And that's just something I felt as I was watching it. But again, I'm not trying to sit here and pick it apart and analyze it too deeply, because I think what's so powerful about this film is, you know, that it has all of these weird kind of abstract feelings that I think we can attach to the most vulnerable parts of ourselves. So a lot of our sensory memories that we have, anything that we have used in our lives to define who we are, can be used in some way, can be evoked while watching this film. You feel all aspects of a human life throughout this. You know, you feel the sense of self-struggle, but as well as the self-nourishment, you know, feeling this abandoned, but also always working to try to rebuild yourself, experiencing life and pain, anguish through that pain, and then somehow finding enlightenment through that anguish. And the detail in this film, every prop, every little gesture, everything has been thought out so perfectly, so intricately. And you can see just how many directors have been influenced by him. A huge one. You cannot deny Alejandro Jodorowsky is hugely influenced by him, particularly with his film El Topo. And then there's Tarkovsky. You know, the two of them were Franz Porozhanov and Tarkovsky. And then if we want to get into more modern directors, a huge influence, it seems, is Wes Anderson. Just the framing and the specificity of everything. I don't think a movie like that could exist without a movie like Color of Pomegranates. And you can just see a lot of influences this film has had on pop culture, but, you know, for good reason, because it is, again, so visually staggering and bold, and it is blurring the lines of all of those concrete feelings that you're so used to. It's really going to take you out of your comfort zone, but in a way that I find very, very interesting. I enjoy being out of that comfort zone, because I think that's where you receive the most clarity as a human being. So yeah, I think if you're a person like that and you like films like that, that really challenge you in that way, then this is something you have to see. I think this is one of the great films ever made. If you are a cinephile and you really like art house films, this is absolutely a must. And that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website. As always, I am an artist and I do commissioned portraits and prints. And if that's something that interests you, I have the link for it below. It's deepfocuslens.com. And if you have any questions, you want a commissioned portrait or anything like that, my email is in the description box as well. We can chat about ideas, anything like that, and I'm happy to talk to you. Beyond that, all of my Patreon supporters are here. Thank you guys as always. If you'd like to join, become a patron, you can do so as well below. And there's also links for my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.